I think one of the biggest barriers to recovery is self.
Well, the idea that somehow we are in charge of our own destiny, we're consumers.
Well, self in terms of not just consumers but workers as well. But in terms of well, I'll do worker, you can do consumer if you like, whatever. But for me as a worker, my own fears, the events that have happened in my life can act as a barrier when I'm then working with somebody else. If I haven't worked through those issues and come to an effective agreement with myself. So, for example, if I've been abused and I've never worked through that abuse, then it's much more likely that when somebody discloses to me, I will shut the conversation down because it's going to be too difficult a place for me to go to with that person.
No, I suppose for the consumer, the first question is, why should we believe anybody about this?
Mm-hmm.
For years people have been trying to convince us to accept we're ill, we're going to be ill forever, and we're going to have to take our meds every day for the rest of life. Now suddenly everybody's bounding about shouting recovery all over the place, and we're going, what? Shut up! Wait a minute, what's going on here? And I guess that's a real struggle. That perhaps we need to look and convince people that not that recovery is happening, but that recovery is even a possibility.
But I think, again, when you come to workers, there's still an awful lot of workers out there who don't believe that you can recover from schizophrenia. They don't believe that you can go on to live a normal life, that can go on to have kids, go on to get a job, come off medication. So, they may be trained, may have had some training on recovery and be expected to implement it. But their whole body language, the whole way that they're going to be talking about recovery is going to be with a sense of disbelief.
So they're going around saying to consumers, we're now doing recovery, wink, wink.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that to me sounds, again, a bit crazy. I must admit.
I've seen it happen. I've had conversation with workers who just don't believe. They just think recovery is another fad. Of course, people have got schizophrenia and they're going to be ill for their lives.
Okay, so recovery is a fad and we'll soon get over it.
Yeah.
That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah.
So that's a real barrier, isn't it?
It is.
And I guess if consumers themselves are saying, I don't believe I can recover, and that's being reinforced by that kind of negative thinking, then recovery won't happen there.
Yeah.
What we'll see is the continuation or maintenance model that's not really helped people in the past.
And really, quite often a very symbiotic role between the worker and client, where they both feel that they need each other. And you see this in caseloads where people have had people on their caseloads for 10, 15 years.
So are you saying that some workers suffer from codependency?
Yes.
Wow. Now there's a thought, because I thought codependency was an illness between clients. No. So here we have it then. We have families who may lose their only role if recovery becomes real. We have a workforce who will lose what?
Well, there's a fear for some that, will they still have jobs? If all these people recover, what happens to them? Who will they work with? When actually there's a whole well-being agenda. There's thousands, millions of people out there who still need help.
Is there also this idea that there might be, for the worker, a danger they'll lose their power?
For some, I don't think. I think most workers don't come into mental health work because they want power. I think there is always a group that comes into mental health, comes into prison services, comes into all those kind of professions, because it's a place where they can gain power. I think the vast majority don't. And I think some workers have power that they don't actually want. They'd be very happy to hand it over. But sometimes the system, if you like, insists that they've got to have power. For, thinking of social workers who are part of the sectioning process, psychiatrists as RMOs. Do they, some of them, do they really want that power? Probably not, because they recognise that it actually interrupts their therapeutic relationship.
So, far from it being the worker really being a barrier, or the family being the barrier, it seems like we're moving on to say that what underpins that is a system that creates both the worker and the family as barriers.
Well, for a good example of that is the way I was taught to work with people originally was that you didn't talk about yourself, you didn't let them know anything about your past history, they knew your name and that was about it almost. Whereas what I've learnt through working in a recovery-based way is that if you don't give of yourself, if you don't use your stories, your life, if you don't come over as genuine, trustworthy, flawed, like we all are, then you are not going to engage in the kind of relationship that you will need where that other person's going to trust you. Otherwise there's the danger that they'll put you on a pedestal of perfection, that somehow you're this perfect worker who never gets it wrong, whose life is perfect, has the perfect family, has the perfect job, lives in the perfect house, and how could they possibly going to know, how to support me, who is so flawed?
I suppose that's one of the strangest things, isn't it? Because self can be, for the professional, for the family and for the consumers, the ultimate barrier. And yet self could also be the ultimate answer. Because we often say that the biggest tool we have is ourselves. And I know certainly that I believe very strongly that for the consumer there needs to be this self-awareness, this self-confidence, this self-acceptance and self-esteem. And I guess that's the same for the family, the consumer and the worker. And if we don't have all these elements together, then I guess we won't see recovery happening. So in a sense, we're all responsible for these barriers and need to challenge them ourselves, whether we be family member, worker or consumer.
Well, I think first of all you need to name them for ourselves. What are the barriers that's getting in the way of me doing the work with this person, or for you recovering, or for our mum's understanding why we do what we do? Name them and then help change them.
So we should name them and change them instead of name them and blame them.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is a fundamental change in every aspect of practice. We're asking for that real sense of honesty that's sometimes lost when we're talking to people about where they're at, what they're doing, how they're doing. We almost become patronising.
Well, I think it's not even just that. We've got so caught up in this medical model and this view, around, say, schizophrenia, when in fact we know now just how much trauma is involved. Yet I still hear workers talking about the irrelevance, can't even say that yet, the irrelevance of the person's past. So, they may have heard on the grapevine that that person had been abused 20 years ago. Oh, but that's not, you know, they've got schizophrenia. That's nothing to do with it. And then the person themselves hears this message. It's medical. It's to do with my biology. My past isn't important. So they carry on burying what's been hidden by them anyway because of their own sense of shame, guilt, whatever. And then we give them an excuse by saying you've got an illness that's a disease to not go there. Excuse may be the wrong word, that sounds a bit harsh, but you know what I mean. And it also gives the worker an excuse not to go there because they've got a disease. It's called schizophrenia, and you know we know that psychotherapy or doing counselling doesn't work with people who have that diagnosis. So we don't need to ask questions about their story or look into depth about what's happened in their lives. But we know from our own personal experience and the amount of people that we've worked with, that's exactly where you've got to go.
So are we really saying that the system is deluded?
Yes. Finish.